Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Mug. Today I'm going to talk about ChatGPT's ability to equalize the playing field in many respects, but in particular for, let's just keep it focused on, let's say, essays, your typical article that a journalist would write, or a typical Substack post, or a journal article, things like this. To do these sorts of things is hard. And it's hard in ways that it need not be hard, because there's two things that go into why a typical essay or article or op-ed or these sorts of things are structured the way they are. They're structured the way they are in some part because there are optimal ways, there are really good ways, and there are really bad ways of communicating ideas to other people. All right, that's certainly much of what goes into it. And by virtue of the millions and millions of articles that are out there, over time we've selected for ones that, and writers who are able to communicate well so that the ideas flow into our brains more easily. And of course, ChatGPT just figured out what those rules are. It could just do a sort of a search across all and say, oh yeah, this is kind of what they're doing. But there's more to it than that. A lot of the reasons that articles like this and essays are shaped and structured and are the way they are is as a kind of intelligence signal, right? When we're writing, we're often writing in a formal kind of language that is not just for getting inside your brain, but it's also to show, look, I'm smart, I'm educated, I know things that you don't know, and I can write in ways and structure things in ways that show that are an honest signal. They're honest in the sense that I can't fake it. They're honest in the sense that it's really hard to write that way unless you really did have that kind of formal education. You have years and years of training that corrects all of the kinds of mistakes one might naturally mistake, and you get them beaten out of you so that when you write these essays, it shows that I'm the type that went to Harvard, that type, right? It is not easy to make that happen. And a lot of what's being selected for is not just easy to soak into everybody's brains, but also to simultaneously convince you that I must be worthy of listening to. It's a good read because look how well this person writes. That's some evidence that this person should be listened to, that they must have some high standing, some high degree of education. That's part of it. I don't know what percentage these are, but on the good side, you could argue that, look, now there's folks that just never got that kind of education or never were of the mindset to sit there and pay attention to these millions of subtle rules for composition and grammar and structure and all of these things that can only be known often by bathing in the pool of other such highly educated folks, right? You just can't do that. It's just like suddenly trying to get another accent that you've never bathed in and grew up in. You're always going to be an outsider, never going to be able to do it right. But now you can do it right. You can just ask ChatGPT to do it for you. You can say, look, here's really what I want to say. I'm going to say it in my sort of not particularly well-educated seeming way, or maybe I can't even speak English very well, in which case you're always going to be handicapped at writing these kinds of essays. But you just get the basic idea down, and it can be just as smart. Right? It can be, of course, it can be much, much smarter. But then you can just tell ChatGPT, and as long as it can get it, the basic idea, then it can suddenly put it into the highbrow essay form that it's supposed to be in, right? But it's still your idea. It's your idea. It's just put into this intelligence signaling apparatus that we all use. All right, so that's the first half of it. This is an equalizer. Suddenly all of these incredibly smart people with incredibly smart insights who have been unable to get their ideas across because, one, they may not have even been able to put it into really simple to explain things that help it be absorbed by minds, and two, they can't get it into the highbrow form that it has to be in order to be even allowed to be in certain kinds of communication settings. And it will often not be believed if someone is using the wrong kinds of English and the wrong kinds of composition. People will say, look, this person looks fishy, and they'll just stop taking them seriously, for better or worse. Right now, anybody with good ideas can have those good ideas related and pass those kinds of intelligence signaling tests. Because they were intelligence signaling tests, but now they're not. And now the other consequence of this is that folks that did have that kind of highbrow training and can write or always have written in those ways need no longer do so. New kinds of things will pop up, will evolve that serve to honestly signal that, hey, I'm intelligent, right? That's the kind of things that will still, other ways, I don't know what those ways, I haven't really thought about what those ways will be, but getting an essay into that kind of highly structured, narrowly fashioned form won't be it anymore, right? And so when I write a Substack, for example, I'm not going to bother, and I've already sort of given up even before this came up, I'm not really trying to get it into this kind of form anymore. I said I'm just going to say what I need to say, however I want to say it, that gets across it best to the reader. And I've always, for a long time, I've dispensed with this kind of thing for at least 10, 15, 20 years. But now there's definitely no reason to hold on to that form and recognize that, look, the only reason you might have been writing that way is in large part because it was part of culture as a kind of intelligence, honest signaling selection force. That's why we were doing it, even though you didn't realize it, right? So now, it should open up your writing styles. You can write up into wholly different kinds of ways. And in fact, in the long run, this could undermine ChatGPT. ChatGPT doesn't realize that we write the way that we do in some part because we're honestly intelligence signaling to one another. And if it undermines that, well, we're going to start writing in different ways, right? The selection forces for why we write the way that we do will change. And of course, ChatGPT will sort of follow and suit and just keep mining it. Okay, seems like people write like this now. And okay, now the compositions tend to be like this. And because as we evolve into new different ways of doing it, it will follow us at all times. But there's no reason to write that old style way any longer, not per se. You should just focus on getting your ideas into other people's heads and don't even bother trying to make sure it satisfies these implicit composition requirements that are historically there. The only reason they were historically there, or at least a big portion of it, was for honest intelligence signaling, and that has been made moot. And that was your science moment. I wanted to mention, go get yourself a copy of Harnessed, one of my earlier books on the origins of language and on the origins of music and how these culturally evolved to fit us and to transform us into something more. That's all that these kinds of new technologies are going to do. They're not going to be used so that we can just say, hey, create a novel for me that I can sell. No, they're going to be leveraged by me if I was to write another novel. I have a novel, Human 3.0. If I was to write another novel, I might use these tools thousands and thousands of times to say, okay, I need a little bit of prose quickly that's like this, and then it translates, and I want it to do these sorts of things, and then it does just the simple rote work of getting some basic prose there, and then you do this, well, I don't like that, and you keep correcting, you get it over, and you shape it just like clay but you have a new tool that you can work with. These are just tools that allow us to build bigger and bigger things more and more quickly, and thus with more complexity and more ability to affect minds. And there's your science moment.